us. It's still morning at NTV. We continue on with Turning Your World this Tuesday, the 8th of August, 2023. I am Priscilla Regina Naloga, and in our tech note this morning, we're going to be looking at commemorating the International Youth Day, which is around the corner. It will be happening this weekend on the 12th of August, 2023. But just to give you a backbone of it, our young and carefree days don't last forever. And in this day and era where time just flies, we started with 1st of August, and guess what? Today is the 8th of August. Next thing we're going to be talking about the 25th of August. That is how much time is flying, especially for the young person today. Unfortunately, many young people around the world are facing difficulties, have limited access to essential resources that can pave a way for their better futures. These problems faced by youths are observed on the International Youth Day, which is observed on the 12th of August. And the International Youth Day began in 2000 and was organized by the UN, to recognize the input that young people make in education, in community development, in environmental groups, volunteering for different social projects, as well as working through the different concerns of young people. Now, we do have some young people that are joining me to have this conversation. I'm joined by Mr. Chidega Moses, who's the Secretary at the National Youth Council. You're most welcome, Mr. Chidega.
Thank you very much, Priscilla. It's always my fundamental honor and pleasure to be on Morning at NTV. So thank you for having me always, more so on this fundamental topic, and I'm happy to be here. Okay,
all right. Joining us equally is Miss Fiona Komgisha Esther, who's the country manager with Hello World, as well as co-founder Imagine Her. Good morning to you.
Good morning, Priscilla. Thank you so much for having me. I'm so delighted and honored to be here today.
Okay, let's start with looking at some of these initiatives that have paved way for young people. For example, Hello World. What is Hello World and what does it actually do?
Thank you so much. And it's always an honor and opportunity to talk about our work as Hello World. And just to give you a little bit of background of who Hello World was founded by a lady called Katrine, very passionate about bridging the digital divide and really making sure that digital education is brought to the last mile community person. And a couple of years she's been doing a number of work around digital education, and through Project Hello World we came up with a solution to promote and bridge the digital divide. And this solution is basically called a Hello Hub, where it is a solar kiosk internet hub loaded with educational material. We provide 8 tablets that are loaded with education material, charging point system for the community, but also beyond that, we want to make sure that digital education is brought closer to the last mile person, connectivity is brought to the communities, and communities have access, youth have access to information. So basically that is what we do as Hello World. And in the country we have over 50 Hello Hubs that we have constructed, and we want to be able to make sure, can we give that young person, that child, an opportunity to be on the digital platform. We know how the world is going digital, and we want to be able to target those vulnerable communities that we are working with to promote digital education.
Okay, all right. Let me do a follow-up question. What has been a response of the last mile consumer of what you're providing?
Thank you so much for that question. So looking at what we are actually doing today in terms of commemorating, the Youth International Day, you get to realize that our young people are people who have been exposed to a number of, digital platform. And so as Hello World, being at the center of making sure that communities are really coming in to embrace and walk into the digital platform has been a greatest highlight for us as an organization.
Okay, all right. Mr. Chidega, looking at the National Youth Council, we are in the 2nd month of the new financial year, and the council's budget was cut, terribly cut, that I think you're only left with administration monies to help you throughout this year. How is this actually going to cut and cause you to limp through the year as far as your mandate is towards the youth of Uganda?
Well, thank you very much, Priscilla. I think even last year we had the opportunity to talk about our budget cut and how unfortunate it is and how we think that the government of Uganda is beginning to backtrack on the gains that we have made over time with regards to the empowerment of young people. But just before I get into that, allow me just give some context with regards to the International Youth Day. Like you mentioned earlier on, the United Nations in 2000 thought it very pertinent and prudent that there is need to set aside a day that the globe gets together to commemorate and take stock of the gains and challenges that we have made in terms of empowerment of young people. Of course, this came at the backdrop of the historical injustices that young people were facing, and it wasn't limited only the political but also social and economic. So it was prudent at the time, and later on we saw the African Union adopting the African Youth Charter in 2006, under which member states were enjoined to really adopt affirmative action measures. And that is why to date our 1995 Constitution, Article 32, speaks about affirmative action and enjoins the state to, in fact, take up measures to empower marginalized groups of society, which include the youth. So there has been an attempt to empower young people over time, and that is why you asked her earlier on that what programs are there in place to ensure that young people get to be empowered in terms of economic, social, and political. So over time we have made progress, more so in the legal dimension of things. But coming today and you find that the government of Uganda or Parliament is cutting the National Youth Council budget by 80%, is to me a very big setback, more so in terms of the gains that we had made. Because a country where unemployment continues to be a very big biting force that grows at 4% per annum, and of course this is attributed to many things like a struggling private sector, among other reasons. So I think that it is unfortunate, and the National Youth Council as the umbrella body for the youth of this country, not being able to operate in a manner that it would love to. I think it is a bit detrimental, and I think this particular International Youth Day, there's nothing to celebrate.
Okay,
yeah.
All right. Well, Ms. Komgisha, let's talk about green skills. When it comes to this year's International Youth Day, it's been themed under green skills for youth towards a sustainable world. Why and what is green skills exactly?
Thank you so much for that question. And just to bring to you, you get to realize that the world is transitioning to a green economy. And just the other day I was, checking through on internet, and they were speaking about the world reaching a boiling point where temperatures are really rising in through, and there is no better solution than us really having the green skill to solve some of these climate issues that are coming up, the global crisis that is, rising through. So basically for me, you get to realize that green skills are knowledge, abilities, attitudes that we need to live with, but also support us develop a sustainable and resource efficient society or community. With these green skills, if at all our young people have this green skill, then at the end of the day, the world will be a better place where we can actually be able to enjoy in. I really love the theme for this year, and when we look at it critically, you get to realize that everywhere, not only in the developing countries, but also in the entire world, we are cracking down. The world is really being eaten up by the global crisis that is out there. Climate change issues are coming in, global crises are coming in, and there is no better opportunity than young people having the green skills to actually solve some of the issues that are coming up.
So what are the green skills? So
the green skills are basically the knowledge, the abilities, the values, and attitudes that young people need to live with, but also develop and sustain a resourceful, efficient society.
Okay, so for resourceful and efficient society, Mr. Chitega, which exact green skills opportunities do we have for the youth in Uganda?
Interesting. First and foremost, I have very serious reservations with the way the United Nations comes up with these themes or with these slogans. I think that they are not done through a proper consultation process, because I think different countries and different continents are grappling with different issues at a particular time. What might be pertinent to Europe right now might be the issue of climate change. And I'm not saying that we aren't facing it here in Uganda or here in Africa, but I'm saying at this point in time, it is not so much of a priority to us as the people of Uganda. Our young people today are grappling with unemployment, issues of access to education, issues of access to sexual reproductive health for our young girls. Those are the issues that we are grappling with. So if I were to redefine the theme for this year, I don't think I would settle for something that is around climate change. Because, like I mentioned to you earlier on, I think about 2 months ago, medical interns were up in arms. All right? So issues around access to education, the students' loan scheme has been halted. All right? There are over 10,000 students who had benefited from this particular loan scheme from 2014. Now, the fate of those who would love to apply for this particular loan scheme now hangs in the balance. All right? And these are the issues that we must be talking about on International Youth Day. But then dragging us to talk about climate change, whereas the people who are moving us towards this direction are the same people who continue to issue licenses to explore their natural resources. So I feel there is a lot of hypocrisy that comes with some of these things. But, well, what green skills are there? I think even if you asked a young person in Uganda, what is a green skill? I'm sure it's an alien concept to them, to be very honest, because someone who cannot afford a meal a day, someone who cannot find formal and decent employment, you cannot tell him about a green job. All they care about is finding a meal a day. All right?
Actually, so the translation of a green job or green economy would be green as in money. You know,
I think the green comes with an aspect of sustainable sustainable environment. That, you know, yes, these jobs that don't injure the environment, that are sustainable in nature in terms of natural resources. All right, that let's not have jobs that have let's not create jobs that damage the environment, like you know, industries and things like that. But we cannot avoid that conversation. Uganda has just discovered its natural oil, and you know, we must, I mean, show me a country in Europe that has developed fundamentally without having to explore their natural resources. The UK with its coal. I mean, all these countries, when at the height of the COVID-19 crisis, you saw the USA president going to negotiate with the Middle East and ask them to produce more oil. So I think that Uganda and Africa is not ready for discussions around, you know, how do we not exploit our natural resources. We must be able to have conversations as a continent around how do we achieve economic independence. The beauty is we are in an era of the African continental free trade area. All right, I think that such a day should have been able to, you know, recognize that we haven't made advancements with being able to trade with each other. All right, and how do we have young people empowered to the extent that they have access to credit, they can be able to enterprise. Those who are in agriculture can be able to have access to fertilizers, have access to maybe irrigation schemes. How can they be able to produce products that are competitive on the global and continental level? I think that is where we should be focusing on economic empowerment and, you know, building up a resilient young population that can, you know, withstand challenges of unemployment.
And so, Komgisha, Chidega here does represent a number of mass youth that actually do share this school of thought, asking themselves at this point in time as Uganda, where does this actually all feed into Ugandan youth actually making sure that they have a better future secured now and not later with the opportunities that are present? So what other disparities from your side are actually existing in addressing and enabling youth to actually achieve the green skills that you talk about?
Thank you so much. And I really love what my colleague has mentioned in terms of quality education. And I think this is our area where Project Hello World actually thrives in. And I think this is one of the disparities that we are having in terms of quality education. You get to realize that young people do not have access to quality education. And at the end of the day, this gap is huge. And so when we are zeroing down down to the communities that we are working with. You get to realize that a young person has gotten an opportunity to go just basically to primary level, and they are not actually exceeding through to secondary or university, and there is that gap. And we are talking about the green economy. We are talking about these people being able to really compete and rise up and get that opportunity. So that gap in there of quality education for the young people is one of the things that is missing. And in our project in Hello World, what we have done actually to support different stakeholders and our communities to do this, we decided to say, can we be able to empower the communities holistically to construct their own Hello Hubs? Can they be able to acquire the soft skills that are in there? So when you look at some of the programs that we run programs like life skills, we run programs like basic computer training. These are ordinary programs that someone might think, you know, they're just little programs that are, you know, there. But then at the end of the day, these are the programs or skills that are not taught in school, and a youth is prepared in through up to university, but when they come out, they do not have the soft skills in there. So how do we guarantee that they will have an opportunity for a better future? So at the end of the day, through the programs that we introduce, we see that young people are able to be fully empowered. They discover who they are, they discover their abilities, they discover their talents, and they're able to move out with that opportunity to thrive into, you know, the world. The other part that I would also talk about is the gender inequality. You get to realize that in the communities that we are living in, I'll talk in the context of Uganda, you get to realize that always women are put in a point whereby they say this is for the men. The men are the only people who can actually thrive in the green economy. They're the only people who can do the tech stuff, you know, the technology part. And there is a huge gap. And that's why you get to realize that parents pushing boys more to school than even the girls, because we think that at the end of the day, the girl will amount to nothing. Mm-hmm. So this gap is really huge, and we need to be able to close that gap. And luckily enough for us, we thought of certain programs that have really come in to support the young people, especially the women. We started a program called the Engineering Fellowship Program that we ran in a way that there was a problem in the community where we go to construct these hubs. You get to realize that women were struggling to put solar panels. They're struggling with the wiring. They're struggling to participate in the tech activities. And they're like, okay, this is for the men. And we say, this is a problem and we need to address it early. Mm-hmm. If a young girl is growing up and they are knowing that these are for the men and this is for the women, then there is a problem. So with the fellowship program, we put engineer women on the forefront to be able to take lead, to take an example to the community, to say, look here, even a young girl can actually be able to have this. And this needs to be developed right from the onset. So that is one of the issues I think we should be able to tackle in our country, to be able to give our young people equal opportunities, both the women and the girls. We should be able to give them, you know, that equal opportunity. And lastly, the other piece that I could talk about is infrastructure and connectivity. Mm-hmm. We all know the gap that is there. When you look at the connectivity part of it, of course, like, you know, in the urban setup, in the cities, internet is almost everywhere. But what about the rural communities? What about those hard-to-reach communities? There is a big gap in infrastructure. There is a big gap in connectivity. And I think we need to be able to focus on those hard-to-reach communities to be able to bridge in that gap. And through our work, you get to realize that we are working with the hard-to-reach communities to make sure that we take connectivity in there. We provide internet. We provide the infrastructure. We provide the resources. Why do we do this? I think it was very evident during COVID-19 when the schools were shut down. What happened to our education system? You get to realize that the child who is deep there in the village did not get an opportunity to study online, but they're going to be competing with a child who is in a better school. So when we look at the connectivity part of it, the infrastructure, the education gap, we need to be able to focus to make sure that the hard-to-reach communities, those children that are in those spaces, the youth that are in those hard home communities, get that opportunity to be in that platform.
Okay.
Yeah.
Mr. Chidega, the existence of Hello World and the hubs that they are doing is simply giving us the reality check that government has not been able to do its due diligence to ensure that these services are provided for efficiently, proficiently, and to the most extensive communities as far as remoteness is concerned. And with, of course, the reflection of the financial year that we are in, anything concerning youth has been pushed back unless you have to push it through the PDM. Where do we stand in rectifying this gap that we are seeing?
Thank you. I think it was Thomas Hobbes who told us about the social contract theory, that government is a duty bearer to its people. And then when government has a contract with its people, there are certain obligations that it has. There are certain social services that government is mandated by obligation to offer to its people. And education, healthcare are at the center of this particular principle. So, you see, Olivia and Priscilla, it is unfortunate that we imagine that somehow jobs will create themselves, somehow opportunities will create themselves. A government must be intentional about creating opportunity for its people.
Absolutely.
All right? If you look at, for example, the USA and how it transformed its economy, it was through deliberate policy measures. You may recall the Smoot-Hawley tariff that limited foreign direct investment into the USA to protect the domestic companies from direct competition from multinationals who by then had muscled so much financial muscle. So government must be intentional in terms of policy. Uganda has taken the outward-looking economic approach that we encourage foreign direct investors at the expense of our local players here. We give them incentives, we give them land, we give them, some of them we even give them money to invest in our own country. You see, so and even the local content bill that we talk about is not being emphasized as much. That if you've invested in Uganda, how many locals are you employing in your company, but also at what level of employment are they working? Are they just sweeping your offices, or they're at managerial level? So there are many issues that a government has responsibility to work on to ensure that its citizens are empowered. So, but also if you look at, like I mentioned earlier on, the private sector, you cannot expect jobs to be created if you have a defunct private sector. The private sector must be able to work. Uganda Development Bank, in my view, is underfunded because, our private players are choking on debt. You may recall the Ham DTB case. You may recall the Bitature and the South African moneylender case. Our private players are choking on debt, whereas those who come from outside are enjoying it and having it all rosy. So I think I agree the government has a responsibility to its citizens to create an enabling environment so that its citizens can thrive. The young people today who cannot find employment have opted to participate in the digital economy. They have their products and put them online. But you have an 18% tax levied on internet. How are these young people going to maneuver through?
So that government can get money to extend the internet to further, communities.
That is why we are championing the startup bill in Parliament as the National Youth Council. We are saying that, okay, if there is a youth-led enterprise, can we give them 1 year tax holiday? Let them begin their enterprise, be able to get onto their feet. Then you can tax them as a government. But they have just opened and there are all these things they're paying KCCA, they're paying what? The business just cannot grow. And with a grappling access to credit.
While they have to navigate the markets and find their footing.
And you know that commercial banks lend at what, 20%? So you have someone who is, first of all, struggling with accessing credit. Then when they get to invest it, they are again choking. So it is what we call a clawback clause. Government gives you with one hand and takes away with the other through taxes.
Okay, well, it's the reality that we are living in. Nevertheless, I know that there are opportunities. And closing this conversation on International Youth Day that is coming up, what's the message of hope? Let me start with you, Komgisha.
Thank you so much, Priscilla. For me, I think the message I want to pass across is can we be able to empower the youth holistically? And I love the fact that when my colleague was mentioning about the green skill, you get to realize that if our young people down there, especially in the rural communities, but also in the urban setup, are asked about the green skill, can they actually be able to relate through with the green skill? Or it is something that we have just put on paper, you know, on table, and it's only a few people that can actually be able to relate. So I think it is an opportunity for us to really come through together as stakeholders to be able to empower the young people holistically with the green skills so that they can be able to be ready for the market.
All right, Mr. Chidege, on a national level, what's your commitment to youth?
Well, our commitment as the National Youth Council, I'll just borrow the words of the late Reverend Desmond Tutu, who said that before you ask what the government has done for you, what have you done for yourself? And what have you done for your country? To the young people out there, yes, we agree that government has a responsibility to you. It is a duty bearer to you. But also at an individual level, at a personal level, what have you done for yourself? It is very important that we are speaking about political participation and decision making. What have you done to ensure that your voice is being heard? We are speaking of economic empowerment. Have you gone out of your way to try to put up a business and see how far you can go with it? You know, have you, in your small platform on your Twitter handle, have you spoken about the issues that we are grappling with as young people? So the responsibility is upon us. No one is going to come and do these things for us. We must do them for ourselves. Have a lovely morning. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much, Moses Chidege with the National Youth Council, as well as Fiona Komgesha with Hello World, for enlightening us on this conversation and the opportunities that lie ahead with the green economy and the green skills, with the International Youth Day coming up on the 12th of August 2023. Away from that, we do have a young man, a youth that is in Zanji, and he's definitely going to be giving us a traffic update